Welcome to Dallas Unplugged. I am Tosha Herron-Bruff. Dallas Unplugged is Dallas Habitat's podcast to talk about issues that impact all of Dallas residents. And today we are here at Dallas City Hall talking to District 1 Councilman Chad West. And we are so happy to be here with you, Chad.
I'm happy to be here too. Thanks for coming in here. Thanks for all Habitat does for the community. And let's talk about some housing.
Yes, let's get into it. But before we talk about housing, because you and I can geek out on housing all day long.
We're housing nerds.
We can, but I want to know from you. You're so passionate. When you were running for city councilman, I followed your campaign, and you, the fact that you're a ex-military, you're a veteran, combat veteran. I'm just wondering, how does that kind of shape your worldview? Did that inspire you at all to take this role?
Like how'd I get to where I am? Starting there. When I joined the military, it was really I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know that with my life at the time, right? But I knew that doing something that was bigger than myself, that just focusing on me, was appealing to me, and it turned out to be serving my country. Right. Yeah. How I got from there to politics, gosh, it's when I left the military, I went to law school, and being a lawyer is awesome in some sense because you learn how to dig into things and figure them out. Right. More so than just the minutia of the law. I was never passionate about that.
Right.
But getting into problems and figuring it out. To find a balance in my life, I did community service. I started some charities in my neighborhood, and I got very involved in the community. I found after a few years that a way to do that on a larger scale was politics.
Yeah.
And just opening my business in Oak Cliff, starting the Dash for the Beads, 5K and 10K run in my neighborhood. I got to know my neighborhood really well. I got to know my neighbors really well. And it was just sort of a natural transition to say, hey, you know what? Let's start working on some of the bigger issues the community's facing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my path.
It's still a fight, but it's a fight in a different way, right? It is. You're able to advocate. We talk about advocacy all the time here on Dallas Unplugged, but it's fighting in another way.
It's fighting in a way that you're really, truly making a difference for a lot of people. You're not just trying to, as a lawyer, make money for one person versus another. When I don't fault that at all. It's I've done that for many years. It's a great profession. But here it's a way to make a difference, especially in the housing world, being chair of housing and homelessness solutions.
Yeah, we're sitting here in your office, and this is just an incredible view of Dallas. I'm born and raised in Dallas. I'm an Oak Cliff girl.
That's why I like you.
Oak Cliff girl. And my husband, who is not from here, we always have this battle about what city's best, and there's no argument that Dallas for me is best. But what makes you proud when you say you live and work in Dallas? What are some of the things that make you proud?
Dallas is, so I came here I went originally after law school, went to another city. Now, I won't name the city, right?
Okay.
Because nothing about that city. But coming to Dallas, and what drew me to Dallas and ultimately Oak Cliff was the diversity of people and culture. I grew up in an area where everybody looks like me, where everyone's extremely on one side of the political spectrum. And it's a lot of, everyone just kind of thinks the same, right? I wanted to, after I left my hometown and after I kind of left Lubbock, where I went to law school, I wanted to be in an area with a lot of diverse thinking, with a lot of different cultures, open-mindedness, and frankly, like a beautiful area. And Oak Cliff is, as you know, is full of trees and hills, and it's beautiful. It's just awesome. And I Dallas right now, the city council, we're trying to come up with a slogan. We don't have one right now. And the city council, we've been debating it. No one has come up with one yet. Hopefully by the time this airs,
I'm sure somebody's going to come up with something.
But one thing that keeps coming up is opportunity, that word, in our slogan development. And it is a city where it's like limitless opportunities because of the transportation, the people, the energy in the city. All of that together.
Yeah. So. My dad, who is from, my dad and mom are from Mississippi, and they grew up in the Jim Crow South era.
Sure.
And in the early 70s, they moved to Dallas just for what you were describing, for opportunity. Dallas was the city they saw as an opportunity. My dad is a businessman, and he figured out this was the place he wanted to lay down roots, But what's becoming a challenge, I think, now is that families are finding it harder to not only make ends meet, but, from a housing perspective, families are finding it difficult to live in a city that's becoming unaffordable. You had the housing committee.
Right.
I come and I attend your meetings, and I know that it's a big task and challenge that this committee has before it.
Right.
What are some of the issues that you all are dealing with right now? Maybe some short-term solutions, maybe to some of our housing issues.
So there's really two things you got to look at. One is creation of new housing stock for the city, and the second one is preservation of the old housing stock that we have that's affordable. We don't want to lose what we have, because once a house comes down, you got a vacant lot, it creates blight a lot of times. So there's two different paths when you're going to talk about what we're doing in terms of policy. On the first path, creation of new housing, and let me step back for a minute. The goal we're working towards is 20,000 new affordable units. That's been the goal that's been stated. It came out of a Federal Reserve workshop a few years ago. And the comprehensive housing policy, which I'm going to go into in a minute, my prop. The comprehensive housing policy has set the goal of 20,000 new units. So we're working towards that. On the creation of new units, I mean, from a broad sector, it's how do we incentivize developers to want to go into areas and put nice new housing, particularly in areas where there's no housing at all, right? Or a lack of housing. How do we get them into the expensive areas of town and get affordable units there, right? Because uptown, we need workforce in uptown. But a lot of people can't afford a 700 square foot apartment that's $2,200 a month, and maybe wouldn't want to. And then on the other track, you've got the preservation of the older homes. And these are folks that are a lot of times aging out. You've got your elderly couples who they can no longer afford to really take care of their homes, and the homes fall into disrepair. And you've got your low income families. So we've got programs for both preservation of those homes and also creation of new homes. But frankly, with what we've got right now, we're just not building them fast enough. So.
And we see, you could drive around the city and you see all of the development that's going on.
Right.
And so you can imagine it's a very difficult conversation to have to someone who's living in one of these communities that is, economically stressed and burdened and doesn't have a lot of the basic things that neighborhoods need to thrive. But they drive and they see all these things that are happening for people who really earn a little bit more money than they do. What do we say to those families that, are struggling to, really decide, do I pay my rent or my mortgage, or do I pay for my child care, or do I buy medicine? People are having those real conversations.
And that's happening to our police officers, that's happening to our firefighters, our nurses, our teachers. They are literally moving out to Grand Prairie and to DeSoto because it's more affordable than Dallas. And bringing folks back in. I was just talking to someone this morning about when you talk about affordable housing, there are so many different gambits. Affordable housing, the definition includes homeless, housing for homeless, housing for 120% AMI, which in Dallas is over 100,000 a year. And you got to think about that too. Absolutely. And then you got to think about the folks kind of around that in the middle of the AMI level, who's like your 50 to 70,000 range. That's your firefighters, that's your police officers. And we can't even find homes for them in Dallas.
Yeah, and what you're saying is so true. I think the face of affordable housing, I think we need to talk about it differently. Just what you said is spot on. Because I think a lot of people think affordable housing is not something that's my issue. It impacts so many people and impacts our economy. You talk about firefighters. Can you imagine someone who goes and serves our community but doesn't have an affordable place to call home? That's just not, Dallas deserves better than that. The people of Dallas deserve better than that.
Almost 80% of our first responders live outside the city of Dallas. And they work in the city of Dallas.
Wow.
And that's a problem. And so we've got programs now that we're starting to roll out on first-time homebuyer programs to encourage them to stay in the city.
Okay.
So that is that's one way we're working on them. The bigger picture is, talking about the comprehensive housing policy for a second. We've got and I'm not going to read the whole thing, I promise. It's a 150-page document, and I'm so glad we have it because up until 2018, the city did not have a comprehensive housing policy.
Which is amazing for a city like Dallas not to have that. We would
just have programs that are funded by HUD, or we would get state funding, and we would just kind of push those programs out.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have a plan, someone else will make it for you. And the Fed kind of helps us. The state kind of helped us. Well, finally, the last council, I can't take credit for it. I wasn't in council, but they put together the comprehensive housing policy. I think the next step, what's missing from this policy, is an action plan to take it to the next level. The way the comprehensive housing policy reads, it's a 150-page document kind of reads like a manual if you're going to build a radio. It's like if you're going to sit there and put together a radio, it's complicated, it's technical, not a lot of pictures or graphs, it's not emotional, it doesn't draw you in. It's a good framework for staff to tell them how to run the program. There are literally 2 pages that talk about a vision plan. And the other document that I have in my little binder, my prop here, is Atlanta has a really cool plan here that they put together called the Housing Affordability Action Plan. It's got graphs, it's got stories of folks of if you're a firefighter that makes $77,000 a year, what type of house can you afford with your income level in the city of Atlanta? It includes an entire chapter on equity. It includes a discussion about transportation, which is a huge piece in housing, making sure people can get from their house to their work. And so I will be proposing to City Council and to the city in the next few months to a year that we look at doing an action plan. And this is not something done within the silos of City Hall. It's something that is done from the whole city. We would bring in stakeholders, the real estate community. We bring in religious faith leaders, leaders of the different associations, police and fire, bring everybody together to provide input on what is our vision for truly bringing affordability to the city look like.
And when we were talking earlier, you were saying, if someone else has done this and they are executing this well,
right.
Why do we need to recreate the wheel? I always think Atlanta is a very comparable city to Dallas. And I think we were talking earlier, we have a growing homelessness problem that is going on in Dallas right now that really has its own set of challenges right now. And you are very instrumental in bringing on some initiatives around homelessness. Talk to me about the 100 Homes for Veterans and what does that do for our city?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So homelessness is a big part of the Housing Committee. My committee's name is Housing and Homelessness Solutions, and we're tasked with doing whatever we can to reduce homelessness in the city. It starts with providing homes for folks, right? If you don't have a home, it's hard to get the wraparound services. Now, what you don't want to do is throw a person in an apartment or in a unit and not have those wraparound services.
That's right.
You got to have both. So that's a piece of it. I've got what I see as a 3-prong approach to turning the tide in homelessness, which if we have time, we can talk about all 3 of them.
Yeah.
But there are longer term approaches. In the short term, to help inspire council, help inspire the city, that the city cares about homelessness. We partner with MDHA, Metro Dallas Homelessness Alliance, who is our center for the continuum of care. All the HUD monies come through MDHA, right, for homelessness. MDHA has done these 100-day challenges before. We're stepping up this year to help with the 100 Veterans for 100 Days challenge to make sure we can house 100 veterans in 100 days. City's providing them every resource that they ask us for, and manpower, political support, community support if needed, to get these veterans in housing. And veterans they're kind of an easy target for this challenge because there's a lot of federal programs available to them. They've got the VA for their medical care. There's just more programs for veterans than there are for other types of homeless categories. And so it's an easy tee up for success for the city, and I think it's a good thing for us to have as a win, especially
course.
if we reach our goal by the end of the year, this year, which is to end veterans homelessness in Dallas.
Wow. I agree with you so much on just whether it's homelessness or it's, providing affordable home ownership. It's not enough just to provide the shelter, right?
Right.
The shelter is only one part of it. When you look at problems like this, you look at it holistically. If you don't have those services to help create sustainability and growth and change and to really help families thrive, just providing that shelter doesn't do everything that we need it to do.
You've got to have, it's called in the industry wraparound services, and that is mental health care, medical care, job placement, child care in cases, right? And even pet care for some folks. There's homeless pets too.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have all of those opportunities and services for folks. And we've got a great network in Dallas to help provide those. And so that's a piece of it. One of the prongs, I talked about my 3 prongs that I'm hoping will help us turn the tide in homelessness. One of those models, which is the biggest piece really, is modeling after what Houston's done. Houston was labeled as HUD a few years ago as a priority city, which wasn't a good thing. It meant that they had one of the worst homeless populations statistics in the U.S. But as a result of being designated as that, Houston had the opportunity to invite HUD in to come into the city and help them with the understanding that, hey, if you'll do what we say, you'll most likely turn the tide in homelessness and you'll probably get more resources from the federal government. Well, they did it. And under the leadership of Mayor Anise Parker, this team came in. They ended up, after a year, I believe, they more than doubled their HUD budget from $16 million to $38 million, which brought more housing. And the impetus of that whole program was to take your center, your main provider, which in Houston it's the Coalition for Homelessness, and in Dallas it's MDHA. And it's funneling all the organizations through that in terms of data collection, tracking beds, tracking individuals. Everything is funneled through one, and tying their funding sources, getting the philanthropic community on board to say, hey, listen, we'll either give you more money or we will continue to fund you if you participate in this effort. Getting everybody under one window so that you can find the best programs, replicate it, and scale it, and make it work. And they did it. And as a result, Houston is the only major city in Texas that has reduced its homeless population and continues to do so.
Until Dallas is going to do it.
Yeah. Once we do it.
Until we do it.
Well, we're on that path, frankly. So we will get there.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about as well is, Dallas, you and I were also talking about Dallas as a city, when I look at it geographically, that the disparity between North and South, there's disparity between those of us that are Black and brown. Talk to me about the city and the city's work to close that gap, whether it's housing, it's education. There's so many, indicators that suggest that the city has a lot of work to do in that regard. What are your thoughts about that?
I completely agree that that is a huge challenge. I'm a white guy.
Yeah,
and,
that you are.
Yes. If you can't tell, I live on the south side of the Trinity, and my district has, we are a very tight, in terms of geographic population, of very diverse group of folks. The rest of the council members and the vast majority of the South are either Hispanic or African American. And you're right. It is the vast majority of people of color are pushed into the South, or have been over decades because of redlining, because of housing policies that have pushed folks down there. I think under the leadership of TC, our city manager, we have, if you guys paid attention in the elevator on the back, it talks about the 4 E's. Equity is one of those.
I saw it.
And equity is a major focus in everything we do. Every single policy that the city passes, there is always a discussion about equity. And how does this impact people of color? How does this impact people, not just in color though, but in geographic regions of the city, socioeconomics? And we as the city have got to be the leaders in that, because we can't ask our corporate neighbors in the city. We can't ask our other parts of our government to do it if we as the city are not doing that. So having the Office of Equity in the city and having their sole responsibility to vet out our policies, I think is pretty key. Having the Office of Community Care, which is really focused on the South, like closing up the food deserts, making sure they have the services there that have been in the North for 20 years.
Right.
Those are two key pieces in that. Now, from a housing perspective, what is so key is having affordable housing, workforce housing too, throughout the entire city, and not just consolidating it in one area, because that didn't help anybody.
That's right.
Right? And if you are a person who makes $35,000 a year, you cannot afford to live in Uptown. There's just no way, unless there is some type of designated workforce housing there. And that means we as a city have got to create policies to make sure there is housing there, because who wants to live in Grand Prairie and have to drive 45 minutes against traffic to go work at a restaurant? Or it's not ideal. You'd much rather walk to work in most cases.
Of course, except for if you me. I don't know how much I want to walk to work, but you want to have
the millennials. This is the millennial thing.
You're right. So it's they remind me every day that I'm not in that group. I don't know about you. I'm not in that group, but you're right. It's the millennials that
I'm out of the groups. I got too much gray. They kicked me out of it a while back.
Well, I want to talk. Oak Cliff. I love Oak Cliff. I was born and raised and grew up in Oak Cliff, and Ebby Holiday, who is a legendary real estate person who passed away several years ago. She owned and ran Ebby Holiday Realtors. Before she died, there was an article that came out, and they asked her, what part of the city, if we had to, get your opinion on what people should be looking for or toward growing and making the biggest impact over the next several years, and she named Oak Cliff. This is right before she passed away. And as we know, Oak Cliff is growing, and you see the development in the Bishop Arts District and all the things that are happening in your district, District 1. Tell me, why do you think Oak Cliff is growing in the way that it is? And on the flip side of that, as a community is growing, we also have to protect its most vulnerable citizens from being pushed out. Talk a little bit about that.
That is the true balance of my district. Is folks want the shops, they want the boutiques and the galleries and the restaurants and all of that, but not the traffic and not the density that comes with it. It's a real challenge for us as a neighborhood to sort of, how do we welcome this in without the results that oftentimes come with overdevelopment, right? And so your first question is, why Oak Cliff, right? Well, it is literally across a bridge from downtown Dallas. So you've got the vast majority of Dallas's business community right there in the center. And you don't have to cross an interstate to get there. You just go right over the Trinity. Right. You've got some of the most beautiful topography in the city with the hills and the trees. There is a great network of trails and parks in Oak Cliff that have been preserved for decades. And an old historic housing stock that's there from the 1900s up through now. And just some beautiful, beautiful homes. And you've got a great sense of community, and you got a really vibrant arts community there too. And so people want to live there. It can be welcoming for everyone, from the folks who want to live in $1 million home to the folks who are like kind of the art community, to the hipsters. A lot of folks say we're very similar to Brooklyn or parts of Austin before it overdeveloped. And so Oak Cliff's got an appeal to a wide range of folks too. We've got a really amazing, diverse and vibrant Hispanic community in Oak Cliff that is really strong in its roots as well. And so all of those are reasons why people want to move to North Oak Cliff. As a result, you've got potential for overdevelopment and push out. Now, two avenues to this that we got to look at. One is you've got to always protect the neighborhoods. I have said as a politician, I will never support upzoning a single family neighborhood unless it is widely requested by those neighbors. I believe in neighborhood self-determination because once you take down a single family neighborhood, you never get it back. So preserving neighborhoods is at the core of, I think, what makes Oak Cliff special. Secondly, preserving the folks that are there. Now, we talked a little bit about this early on, and that is preserving our older housing stock, because we have a lot of old homes. We've got 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, some Tudors, some mid-century modern houses they're aging, right? And it's having these programs in place to help seniors get money to help fix it up. And we had partnered with Habitat. The city had for Habitat to either match it financially or to come out and provide the work with the city's money kicked in as well to go fix up roofs and do things that will help people stay in their home. It's not cosmetic stuff. It's just stuff to make basically repairs that are going to keep you in your home.
That's right.
So it's providing those services. And then we talked about this a little bit too, is transportation. Because you can maybe afford to live in a little bit more expensive of a house if you don't have to drive so far. So making sure we have good public transportation for people, right? Making sure we have grocery stores and work that's close to home. So it's putting in economic development incentives to do that as well.
Well, I'll tell you, we are excited about all that you are doing, not only in District 1, but as, chairing the Housing and Homelessness Committee. But I do have one last question. Now, because I'm from Oak Cliff, I know Oak Cliff very well. I want to ask you, there's lots of places to eat, like new, great places in Oak Cliff, especially in your district. So what's your favorite Oak Cliff spot?
Man, my old one just closed.
Hattie's
closed. And that was a staple with no notice either.
I felt heartbroken.
I felt heartbroken too. I don't know what the whole reasoning behind it, but I know the owner, Tony Alvarez, and a great guy. He lives in Wynwood North. And, really bummed out that closed. So picking a new favorite, I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. And that's hard for me to do, if I'm going to be quite honest. If I'm going to go for Tex-Mex, I usually go to El Ranchito on Jefferson. It's a classic. If I want pizza, I go to Eno's. Eno's is good. There's other good pizza places too. I know the owners, and I love Eno's. And a good hamburger, Hunky's is up there at the top.
And they have a bison burger. I don't know if you eat bison burger.
I have nothing against it. I just love their just general hamburger so much that
it's a great place.
Yeah, and then you've got like Charcoal Broiler, which is cool. I'll go there, a little staple there. So we've got a lot of good places. The restaurants that were there when I first moved in the neighborhood over like 12 years ago are the ones I usually stick with. The new ones I haven't quite, become a regular yet. Like Lucia, if I can get in there, I'll go. It's one of the best Italian in the city. Right. But it's impossible to get into.
Yeah, you can't get in there.
Oddfellows is good breakfast. It's locally owned. And the beautiful thing about all these is they're all locally owned.
They're locally owned.
That's another cool thing about Oak Cliff.
It is.
Helping the small business owner own their business, and then also if they can own their real estate, that is key. And we're looking at doing some classes to help folks learn how to buy your business, because if you're paying $3,000, $4,000 a month to keep your restaurant and you're paying rent to someone else, imagine what you could be putting into owning your own building.
Wow. Yes. I mean, that is key to be able to teach building wealth. Building wealth. Well, thank you again, Chad West. I'm so excited about what you're doing. And Habitat is looking forward to working with you and the city and the city council to make sure we have a better Dallas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Stay tuned, because we have some amazing guests that will be joining us on this journey. You don't want to miss it.